this is Yana Smakula for StAMPtember.com, and thanks for joining me today. Welcome to another episode from my bi-monthly Yippee for Yana video series. In today's episode, I am making a bunch of spring cards featuring this adorable bunny from the new Showers and Flowers stamp set from Simon. Oftentimes, when I want to make several identical cards, I usually make one, and then if I'm happy with it, I make the rest, however many cards I need. And this is exactly the case with the card idea or the card design that I'm sharing today. I love to create in such a way because this allows me to be sure that the cards that I will be making turn out the way I like. This also allows me to step up the design if I want to and make slight changes to it if I need to. So when I started working on these cards, I already had one card done. It was sitting on my desk but off camera. I wanted to create identical cards, but step them up a little bit. I wanted to add some embossed details to the front panel, and I decided to do that with the help of stencils. I have a ton of stencils from Simon Says Stamp, and I love using them for all sorts of fun things. One of those things is dry embossing in my die cutting machine. Not a lot of people know this, but you can easily emboss with any stencil. The Simon Says Stamp stencils work great for dry embossing because they are nice and thick. And the thicker the stencil is, or the material out of which the stencil is made, the deeper and more visible the embossed impression is going to be. So here I've already pre-cut white cardstock panel to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I also die cut circle openings in those panels using my Spellbinders circle dies. Those panels look just fine as is, but I wanted to step them up with the help of stencils and dry emboss some patterns onto them. I've already embossed 2 panels off camera. I used the hard mandala stencil for this panel, and I've aligned the stencil design with the circle opening. Here's what it looks like from the back. And I have also dry embossed one using this stained glass 1 stencil. I also aligned its design with the opening in the center, and that actually left a visible mark where the design cut off at the bottom there. Now, to dry emboss with a stencil, you'll need to have a die cutting machine. Any die cutting machine will do. And you'll also need to use a tan or this brown embossing mat from Spellbinders. I'm using a Spellbinders Platinum die cutting machine, and all Spellbinders machines come with this mat. But if you have a die cutting machine from another manufacturer, you can get this mat separately and dry emboss in your machine using stencils. You just need to make sure to check your machine instructions manual to know what sandwich you need to use so that you do not break your machine. So here I have my mat. I am placing my cardstock panel and going to add a stencil on top. I'm using the Christmas star stencil, and I've aligned it with the die cut circle opening in my panel. I'm going to cover this with another plate and send through my machine to dry emboss. And it's super easy to do. And here you have a beautiful design embossed on your paper. Now you can do this technique with other stencils. Here I have a medium dot stencil, and I'm going to repeat the same thing here. And I have another fun embossed panel for my card. The dot stencil is especially fitting for spring cards, I think. Here's, by the way, that original card that I made, and you can see how the front of the card would look like if you add an embossed panel instead of a regular white cardstock panel. I think it just adds a little bit of interest to the card. I also used another stencil from Simon, large dots, and did the same thing. And later dry embossed one more panel using diagonal stripe stencil. But I had some leftover spray adhesive on that stencil, so that didn't really work as the stencil ended up sticking onto my paper. So just remember to clean up any adhesive from your stencil or any ink if you want to dry emboss with the stencil and have a nice looking background. I'm really looking forward to dry embossing some more panels with my stencils. This diagonal stripe one in particular is the one that I really liked. I like that a simple linear look. So it's very clean and very simple. So I'm looking forward to cleaning this stencil nicely and using it again in the future. One more thing I wanted to mention, if you want your panel to have a die cut opening and embossing, you need to do your die cutting first and embossing later. If you dry emboss first and later die cut, you'll end up flattening the embossed design quite a bit. It will still be visible on the paper, it just won't be visible as much. I also need to stamp cute bunnies for my cards, so I'm using this handsome little bunny from the Showers and Flowers stamp set, and I'm stamping the bunny along with a carrot onto those leftover die-cut circles. I'm using my Simon's Intense Black ink as I will be doing some Copic coloring. I'm going to do some simple coloring today, and I'm going with warm gray colors to color the bunny. I'm first starting with a W5 marker to map out the darkest areas of my image, so anywhere where the shadows are going to fall, and I'm coloring those images with a W5 marker. I'm also coloring the bunny's nose using this same color. Next, I'm using my medium W3 color and extending the shadows further, but I'm also softening them and also adding this color to the other areas of the bunny that will be darker. For the most part, I want this bunny to be white and just have warm gray shadow areas. Finally, I'm using my lightest W1 marker and extending the shadows even further and also adding uneven lines onto the bunny to mimic the fur. Using YR00 marker to color the inside of the bunny's ear, and that's it. Not doing anything else to color him. For my carrot, I'm going with a YR04 and YR07, as well as the YG03 and YG17 colors. I'm going to use my scissors to cut this image out, and somebody asked me recently on Instagram if this image is hard to cut out, and the answer is it is not. What makes it easier to cut any image out is a good pair of scissors. I like using these scissors from Tonic to fussy cut images out, and it also matters on what paper you do your stamping and coloring. I like to stamp on the 80-pound cardstock if I know I'll be cutting the image out later using scissors, as the thinner paper makes it easier to cut it and make smooth cuts. But this image is rather simple. The bunny has a simple shape to it, so it's not hard to cut out at all. I also needed to create a background for my bunny, so I grabbed this tiny dots and hearts cling background stamp and my stamp platform, and I'm going to heat emboss this in white embossing powder onto Simon's Sea Glass cardstock. I also wanted to share a trick with you that I've been using lately. Now, if my paper is smaller than my stamp, like here, the paper is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 and the stamp is nearly 6 inches, I sometimes tape my paper onto the stamp platform with removable adhesive. I know you can position it in the corner and you won't have to hold it down with the magnets, but sometimes these 6x6 background stamps, the design doesn't go all the way to the edge of the stamp and you get a bit of a gap. So it helps to tape the paper in place so that if you decide to double stamp the image, the paper would stay in the same place and it will not move when you open your stamp platform to make the second impression. Now, it is not the case for this particular image, as I did place my paper in the corner, and it didn't matter if the design stamped all the way to the edge or not, because I only needed the design to be in that circle opening, but I just like to be double sure, and this is why I taped it in place. You don't have to do this. Heck, you don't even have to use the stamp platform. You could just ink up the stamp and place the paper on top of it, but I like things to be as good as possible. So this is why I did things the way I did. I added white embossing powder from Hero Arts and heat set my panel. I also heat embossed Hello Spring sentiments from the Spring Seeds stamp set in white embossing powder onto black cardstock to use on my cards. Simon has many fantastic stamp sets for spring, and there's plenty of awesome sentiments to choose from. Here are just some of the stamps that I found in my stash that are fantastic for spring and spring-themed cards. I trimmed my blue heat embossed panels slightly, as I didn't want the blue cardstock showing from the side of my card, and I adhered them on A2 white card bases. Next, I used foam adhesive squares from Scrapwood Adhesives in large and small sizes, and I foam mounted my dry embossed panels in place. I used the same foam squares to adhere the bunnies, and I also used a double layer of adhesive on the bunny's ear to raise it up a little bit more on the card. I foam mounted the carrot onto the bunny and also foam mounted the sentiment strip. Now for the tail on my bunny, I used a little pom-pom that came with a March 2018 card kit from Simon. This kit is sold out, but you can still get those pom-poms separately. They are from Dries and they come in different sizes too. These pom-poms that I'm using today are 1/2 inch size. I like to cut about 1/3 of the pom-pom off to make it less dimensional and just use a little bit of glue to adhere it in place. Before I finish this video, I wanted to show you a way to fix your cards because at some point in our card making, we all have to do this. So here I actually did go ahead and adhered that diagonal stripe embossed panel onto a card as I was kind of hoping to use it, but later decided that it didn't really look good. So I was trying to remove it and save the panel and the card base. The foam adhesive was pretty strong and I was having a very hard time removing it without ripping the paper. So I remembered that I had undo sticker remover, and so I used that to safely remove the paper from the card. You just need a drop of it for each foam square that you adhered, and a little bit goes a long way here. It works really well and removes adhesive no problem. And it also dries clear and it doesn't leave any residue or marks on your paper. So I ended up successfully removing the panel and I felt mounted another of my dry embossed panels in place and was able to save this card. I used new jewel embellishments from Pretty Pink Posh to embellish these projects, and I used them in the color aquamarine, and I just added some here and there to dress these cards up. So here is a closer look at these 4 spring bunny cards that I created today. The first one is the one I made beforehand without any embossing, and it uses another sentiment. This one reads, "Hey there, hop stuff." And the other cards have a hello spring sentiment and dry embossing added to the white panels. So this finishes my cards and video. I hope you will give this idea a try. If you do, we would love it if you could share your project and tag us on social media. We always love to see what you make. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet done so. Thanks so much for joining me today. I will see you next time. Bye!